Alison Botha was born on the 22nd of September in 1967 in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Her parents got divorced before she was a teenager, and she spent most of her remaining childhood years living with her mother and her brother. Alison led a fairly normal life. She was head girl at the collegiate high school for girls in Port Elizabeth. When she finished her education, she took a few years off to travel, and upon returning home, she found a job as an insurance broker. On the 18th of December in 1994, Alison spent an ordinary night out with her friends. They spent some time at the beach, after which Alison brought them back to her apartment for pizza and games. When most of the group had left, Alison drove her last friend home and returned to her apartment. However, she would never reach the safety of her home. As soon as she parked her car, she reached toward the passenger seat to grab a bag of clean laundry to take inside, but she suddenly felt a gust of warm air. A strange man holding a knife had opened the driver's door. He ordered her to move to the passenger seat and then forced his way inside. He threatened to kill her if she moved, thus trapping her inside her own car. The man turned the ignition on and sped away, ensuring her that he just wanted to use her car for an hour or so. He identified himself as Clinton. They drove some distance and ended up with Clinton's accomplice becoming the third person in the car. It was immediately clear that Alison was in grave danger. Alison's captors were later identified as Frans de Toy and Tian Skrier. They drove her to a deserted area outside of town. There they told Alison that they were going to have sex with her now. They asked her if she was going to fight them. Trapped and terrified for her life, Alison assured them that she wasn't. The two men, who had a history of violence against women, both took turns to rape Alison, after which they were determined to kill her. First, they tried to suffocate her. She lost consciousness but managed to cling to life. Frustrated, the two men took their brutality to the next level. They stabbed Alison at least 30 times in the stomach, specifically intending to mutilate her reproductive organs. Again, they thought the job was done until Alison moved her leg. The two men then slit Alison's throat 16 times. They left her there in the clearing, blood pooling around her, assuming that she was deceased. But Alison was still alive, and she was still breathing. She realized that her life was too valuable to let go of, and that gave her the courage to become the survivor of one of the most brutal attacks in South Africa. Alison struggled to understand what was happening to her. It felt unreal, but it wasn't. She felt no pain, but it was not a dream. This was completely real, and it really happened. Lying alone in between sand and broken glass, Alison realized that she had to leave a clue about what happened to her. She decided to write the names of her attackers in the dirt. Then beneath that, she wrote, "I love you, Mom." While writing what she thought to be her last message, she could see headlights streaking through the bushes. She thought that if she could just manage to get onto the road, someone might be able to help her. When Alison started to move towards the headlights, she realized the full extent of her injuries. As she tried to pull herself up, her head started to fall backwards, and she could also feel something slimy protruding from her abdomen, which she later discovered to be her intestines. She used one hand to keep her organs from spilling out, and the other hand to hold on to her own head as she attempted to reach the road and possible survival. She struggled forward and her sight faded in and out. She fell many times but managed to get up and finally reached the road. There she collapsed along the white line. In her confused state, she knew that this was the best position to attract the attention of a motorist. Amazingly, Alison didn't have to wait long for a young veterinary student named Tian Eilert, who was visiting Port Elizabeth on vacation from Johannesburg, to see her lying in the middle of the road. Tian immediately stopped his car and rushed to Alison's side. He used his veterinary training to tuck Alison's exposed thyroid back inside her body, before calling emergency services for help. Alison was rushed to the hospital, where doctors were stunned by her horrific wounds. Dr. Alexander Angelov later said that he never seen such severe injuries in all his years practicing medicine. Alison was on the brink of death, but she managed to pull through, and she also managed to remember everything about her attackers. She was able to identify them from police pictures while she was still in the hospital. This soon led to the arrest of the quote-unquote Ripper rapists, as they were called in the media, the Nuertuk Ripper trial captured the attention of South Africans everywhere. Both Du Toit and Krier pled guilty to 8 charges, which included kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. They were both found guilty and sentenced to life in prison in August of 1995. Alison suffered from both physical and emotional scars from the horrendous ordeal. In order to recover, she decided that she had to face what happened to her. She began traveling around the world, telling her story in at least 35 countries. Alison helped inspire thousands of other survivors to come forward and tell their stories as well. In 1995, Alison won the prestigious Rotarian Paul Harris Award for Courageous Beyond the Norm, and Femina Magazine's Women of Courage Award. She was also honored as Port Elizabeth Citizen of the Year. However, Alison's greatest gift of all was the birth of her 2 sons. Today, her story remains as one of the most inspiring examples of human depravity and strength of the human spirit. Until next time.